Cool. So tonight we're going to introduce Hexagon and the mentorship, as we always do for anybody who is new to the community or to the program. We're going to celebrate the Fall 2020 cohort wrap event and then move to the main event of this night, which is the panel introduction, the panel discussion, and open Q&A from everybody here who's interested in asking questions about the mentorship. And then we'll have upcoming dates and events to share with you about the spring 2021 cohort. Next slide. So Hexagon, our mission statement is focused on creating diversity within technology by creating community for women and non-binary folks within UX. In that way, we are able to support each other as a community, share our own stories, and foster growth in our careers, whichever stage that career may be, whether it's transitioning into the UX community or growing it from one level to another. So Hexagon itself started out in the Bay Area. It's kind of expanded very much into different chapters and locations. As a global community, we welcome designers, researchers, writers, content strategies. So the different routes of someone who is within UX, CX, so that we can cross-learn these different skill sets. Next slide. Our community is 3,000 strong. I would say that number has increased much more, but we don't actually have a visibility to that. So we kept it at 3,000, just imagine it much, much more. And it's also exploded into 19 different cities now, Houston being one of the most active, both for events and for mentorship. Next slide. We started this chapter back in 2017 by hosting just quarterly events. We were trying to see if this was a community or a system that worked for this particular city. And very thankfully, it's worked out. We've grown into monthly events. We have done design hackathons. We have done 5 different cohorts of mentorship already. And of course, our chapter co-lead team is also growing. So the list you see here hasn't been updated. That was the 3 co-leads from last year, but we actually have grown into a team of 10. So we're super excited to have this great team to lead this organization in different areas that we're trying to contribute to this community in Houston. Next slide. So one of the things that drives us is what it means to support each other so that we stay in tech. And this has stayed on our slides for a really long time because I think it's just so powerful, because there is just not enough women representation in leadership within a lot of technology or big corporations. And we would like to see that change, starting from our city right here. Next slide. And one of the things that drives this is also the data that shows women are 5 times more likely to stay in tech if they feel like they have one person supporting them. So we're hoping this community right here will not only create that one person, but a whole system that they can lean on. And the mentorship itself is creating a really great networking opportunity for those who is part of that program. Next slide. So I'm going to pass the baton now to Liana, one of our co-leads for mentorship this year, to talk about mentorship program.
Yeah, thank you, Jane. All right, so what is Hexagon mentorship? So the Hexagon mentorship program is dedicated to supporting the careers of women in user experience by helping them to create meaningful connections and build skills that foster success. And I can attest to that as a post-mentee myself, a graduate of the Hexagon program. So within these relationships, we try to close the gender gap to grow leaders in this space. And here I'm going to show you a few quotes that we have from our past mentees. With interest, drive, curiosity, and guidance of a mentor, learning and entering the world of UX is no longer an impossibility. At the end of my mentorship, I was able to secure my first full-time UX job with the help of my mentor. And lastly, this experience gave me a great appreciation for skill sets and backgrounds that are not on my that were not on my team before. So here's a snapshot of our beautiful fall 2020 cohort. So you can see all those lovely faces here, and I'm going to pass it on now to Estrella to continue. Oh, I think you're muted, Estrella.
Sorry. So now we're at the panel introduction part of the event, and I want to start by introducing myself. Hey everyone, my name is Estrella Rivas, and I'm a co-lead here at Hexagon, and I've been with the community for, I want to say, probably a year or two, and I've enjoyed building my network and making new friends. Coming from a background in footwear design, I decided to make a career change into UX. So I was really happy to find this community and the mentoring program. I was also a mentee in the 2019 cohort, and my mentor was Lorena Lopez, who was amazing. We would schedule 1-hour meetings, but ended up connecting for several hours after. She was really positive and very helpful. The mentorship program really helped challenge me while building my confidence along my UX journey. I feel like I've grown so much through my experience with Hexagon, and I'm really grateful for the community and the new friends I've made. And now, without further ado, I want to introduce our panelists. Next slide. And just a friendly reminder, you'll have 1 to 2 minutes to introduce yourself. And there are 3 questions you can start off with. Please let us know your years of experience, your expertise, and your favorite show that you watched during quarantine. Okay, so let's start with David.
Oh boy, I get that question first, huh? Okay, maybe I can talk long enough to figure out the answer to that. My name is David Stagg. I am the Chief Product Officer and co-founder of a company called Mainline. You can check us out at mainline.gg. We run tournaments in esports for colleges. We really made our bread and butter as collegiate tournament esports providers. I absolutely love it. I head up all of the technology, product, and design of our software. We have a whole other side of our company that does broadcast and production and client services in order to see client success. I took a circuitous route to Chief Product Officer. I actually came from being a product designer instead of being somewhere in the tech aspect of that. It's given me a unique perspective, but I've loved it. And a long time ago when I was younger, a lot of people gave freely of their time to me, and I saw it as the only right thing to do, to give as freely as I possibly could. Whatever knowledge I've learned along the way, if that can help anyone at any time, anywhere, I'd be just honored to be a part of their journey. My favorite show to watch during quarantine, hang on, I actually keep a list of some of this stuff. 000 was my favorite show in 2020, followed by Devs and then Normal People. So if you haven't seen any of those 3, those would be my 3 recommendations. Make sure you watch Normal People without your children around. That's me.
Okay, thank you so much, David. Thomas? Let's start with you.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Thomas Watkins. In UX, I don't know how much years of experience I have. It's something like 12 or something like that. When it comes to research, it's probably more like almost closer to 18 years. So my expertise, my original background is research, and then from that grew into UX architecture, and then a little bit into visual design. I feel like I'm supposed to say more to that than that, but my favorite shows during quarantine, I think my favorite random show lately, it's called Rust Valley Restorers, and it's about these people who rebuild cars in Canada, and they're bad at running business, but they've got to restore these cars that come. I don't know. It's a crazy, interesting, kind of a ultra random show. Okay, I think that's it for me.
Okay, thank you so much, Thomas. Okay, and now Emily. Go
Hey
ahead.
everyone. Thanks for having me on this panel. I have been in sort of what is now called user experience research in a variety of industries for over 10 years. But some of that was sort of non-traditional, and my expertise is primarily in qualitative research and helping teams sort of navigate through really tricky situations and doing really good UX research when the environment is sort of imperfect. So 2020 is the year for that. Gosh, there's people on here who know me too well, and I can't get away with lying about the next question. But I watched every single episode of 90 Day Fiancé. I followed everyone who was talking about it on Twitter. I like went down the theory rabbit holes. I am so embarrassed, and I really hope that no one ever watches this recording on YouTube because it will be my downfall, but I just have to be honest here.
I did the same thing, Emily.
Thank you.
Okay, now Roja.
Hi, everyone. It's great to see some of you all again. My name is Roja Farah. I am a UX designer with almost 2 years of experience. I kind of enjoy working on the spectrum of things that a UX designer might do. So obviously design, but I do enjoy research, which is also a part of my job. Lisa was my mentor. She was awesome. I actually got my first like official UX designer title role while serving as a mentee with her, which I'm sure we'll talk more about over the next hour or so. But yeah, close to 2 years of experience. And then the show that I'm watching. So I'm really bad at favorites. I like so many shows, but I would say I'm really big into like binging one show at a time and then sort of jumping to the next show. Right now I'm watching a show called The Expanse, which is this like sci-fi show on Amazon Prime. Yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you so much, Roja. Okay, Hannah.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Hannah. As far as years of experience, I am new to UX, so that's why I joined the mentorship program as a mentee. So I guess you could say I have 1 year of experience now, half a year of experience, depending on how you count it. So my expertise is in cognitive psychology and cognitive neuroscience. I'm earning a PhD. I'm near the end of my program, and I work in a lab that studies the neural basis of bilingualism. So understanding what does the brain have to do to let you speak multiple languages. As far as favorite show in quarantine, I'm gonna actually pick a movie, even though that might not be allowed. But I'm rationalizing this because I've seen it so many times. So it's like a show to me. So I'm gonna go with Hamilton would be my favorite.
Nice.
Best
Thank you,
thing
guys.
ever.
Thank you so much, panelists. And now we've moved on to the panel quick Q&A portion. And so we have the QR code that you can use your phone to access slido.com. If you have any other questions that you want to ask the panelists, please feel free to go there, and we'll also be posting the link in the chat. Okay, and then I'll start with questions. This is for the panelists. What was the main reason you wanted to get involved in a UX mentoring program?
I have some low hanging fruit here for this one. I kind of touched on it on my intro, but I can still to this day remember when I was either 13 or 14 years old, trying to learn how to do front end development and just learning the HTML language and trying to get an image to show on the internet. And it was impossible. And looking back, it seems like so easy, but we didn't have Google. You couldn't just look it up. And I remember sending, IRC chats off into the void, hoping that somebody would respond. And after like weeks, one person finally did. And they helped me just totally randomly, never know their name, never know who they were. And I got the image to show based on what they told me to do, to upload the image to a server and actually reference the URL of that image on the server. And that was like mind blowing to me. And I got the image to show, and I never forgot that. And he did it freely of his time. He had no good reason to do it other than just to help somebody else out. And it was like, I just wanted to hug him. You know, it was like so exciting to me that I could change the internet. And I've promised myself throughout my entire career to try to do the same for other people. It can be very hard to get into new industries, especially people who are looking for new career changes. It can seem like a hill that's impossible to climb. And a lot of people that have climbed that hill before want to make it feel difficult because it puts them on some kind of pedestal and separates them from other people. And I never wanted to be that. So if I could ever give back to anyone, especially underrepresented people in an industry that I'm a part of, knowing that I've had, abilities along the way that I was born with that, you can't really just make up. I wanted to do that. And so to be able to have the chance to work with somebody one-on-one who actually cares has been phenomenal for me and has given me a lot of hope. And, sometimes I feel like I got out more of it than maybe Katrina did. So that's kind of my story about why I joined this mentorship.
Thank you so much, David. Does anyone else?
Yeah, I think that a lot of what you said, David, resonated with me as well about like, we made it here, like now we want to sort of like protect our mountain. And it's so frustrating for me to see that happen, especially to women and queer people and people of color. Like, it's just sort of like we're trying to knock people out for really dumb reasons. And I feel like some of those reasons are really overcomable if you just know what to do. And so like one example, right, is like, yeah, you might have a lot of background in research that's super applicable, but you're not using the right language because there's just different terms for things in social science versus UX research. And so like, here's some vocabulary that's going to be important for you to know when you're having conversations with like potential future employers. Things like that, I really wish that someone had shared with me. And now I'm like really interested in passing that along because I see people sort of get kicked out of interview panels for things that seem really arbitrary.
Yeah,
I agree. I'm sorry, I was just barging in.
We both were. It's okay. You go ahead.
No. I was just gonna say I agree a lot with David and Emily both, and I'd like to add on to that. Like a lot of companies are bad at recognizing who can add value, because a lot of times you have skills that you don't know you have, right? Or you might be good at certain things. And to me, I think that almost anybody who has like some early kind of exposure to UX and the kind of peripheral fields, you can add value probably doing something, and then on a team grow out from there into other areas. So that, and I just love people growth.
Yeah, I was going to jump off of what Emily said. And also this fits with what you were saying, Thomas, is, from my perspective as a mentee, I'm someone who I know that I have a lot that I can offer this field, but it's a matter of learning the language and learning the core concepts in the field and learning like how to talk to interviewers and how to portray those skills so that it's understood that I actually can contribute to this field. So that was one reason I wanted to be a mentee.
And just to add, I think my situation was really strange in the sense that like where I was working when I first started the program, I was doing UX work, but I didn't have the official title. It wasn't like sort of recognized as at my job as a title you could have. But then also I was the sole designer, so I didn't have anyone sort of challenging me or like pushing me to grow in any way. And so everyone just kind of assumed like I knew everything, and that was definitely not the case. And so just being able to learn and grow with someone who could provide that guidance was really, really important. And just, I think generally in your career, you always want to have someone to, on your side and who can mentor you in that capacity, regardless of where you are in your career.
All right, thank you guys. Do any of you guys want to talk about what the time commitment was like for you?
A couple hours a week.
Yeah, I think for me, it was also about that. But I found myself thinking about it more often. So there was like the actual time when you're sort of sitting with your other person, your mentor or your mentee, but then like, I don't know, it like sort of the emotional time was more than I expected because I found myself like really invested in some of the things that we talked about.
Yeah, my situation is unique in that I had already done one round of interviews for the company I work for now. And I was about to have my second right when the mentorship program launched. So we were kind of like, Lisa was really awesome and willing to sort of dive into the like parts of maybe the timeline that was suggested that you might be doing later on in the program. And so initially, I think we were maybe spending more time. It was a little bit more time doing interview prep and things like that. And then it got a little bit better, like and lighter towards the end. But yeah, I think that's what's great is like every team can kind of tweak the timeline and content to what works for them.
Yeah, we tweaked it. We did once a week, and occasionally I would give her homework to read just for anybody that's watching this or wants to know more about the Hexagon program. It's my first time being a mentor, and hearing about the way that other people do it was very exciting for me because I realized how malleable the program really can be. That a lot of people were confident enough in their mentorships that they were able to roll with whatever punches the person they were mentoring threw at them. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But we did it once a week, and sometimes there was homework.
Yeah, we definitely took advantage of the flexibility of this program, especially with it being virtual this year. I think that helped with this because we aimed to do 1 hour every other week. We actually ended up delaying a couple of our meetings based on where I was with my project. So if there was a week where I wanted to spend more time working on the project that I was actually doing throughout the course of this program, then we would delay it a week so that I would be able to make the most out of that meeting. And I would say also the time commitment meeting face-to-face or virtual face-to-face was 1 hour every 2 weeks, I would say. But the time commitment is also what you make of it. So for me as a mentee, I was honestly probably devoting about 10 hours a week. But that was my choice. And that's because I was developing a portfolio, a UX portfolio from nothing. So I think that the time commitment is really like what you make of it and what's most useful to you.
Okay, thank you guys. So we'll move on to another question. What was your favorite part of the program?
I'll go ahead and start again if you want me to, because I don't want there to be too much silence because there were a lot of great parts about it. This is going to sound super cheesy, but the relationship that I built with the mentee was easily the best part about it. And to see Katrina get excited about some of the things that she was learning that beforehand she didn't really understand or know, or that she thought was way too opaque when it came to defining for her. So for example, the product lifestyle going from user experience research to design to product design to development, and how that all works in a circular fashion. Being able to kind of explain that based on my experience was extremely rewarding for me to see her light up and like see it click. So it was fascinating to work with somebody who really cared. And that's one thing I liked about the program is it seems like everybody that signed up, like, you know, to go out of your way, ask for help. And, you know, those types of people are just, you know, they're so ravenous for that information. It makes it so much more rewarding for somebody like myself who's trying to help teach this, that they actually care enough to pay attention and learn. Because if you've ever taught a class, you know, sometimes that's not always the case. So to work with such a dedicated group of people, that was what probably my most favorite part of the program.
Thank you so much, David. We also have another question on a Slido. What's the best advice? This is for both mentor and mentees. What's the best advice you've gotten from a mentor?
Unrelated, I was not a part of this program, but there's too much silence. So one of the best advice I've ever been given is that there's inspiration and things to learn from everything. So look around and you'll find it when your glass is half empty and you're hungry for more things.
Some of the best advice that I've gotten and that people continue to hold me to is to always negotiate around money and benefits, and that there's usually free things that your future employers can give you, like titles and time off.
Some good advice that I'm trying to employ this year is don't let it beat you twice. So if you get beat up the first time around, don't let it beat you up again. Get back on the horse and try again, and try to forget about what just happened. Learn from it.
I would say too, just to like understand what you need to be successful, and don't be afraid to ask for help in achieving that, which is, yeah, a huge part of why having a mentor is, I think, really important, and just taking every experience as a learning experience.
I think some of the best advice that I've gotten is if it makes your heart race a little, you know you're doing it right. So basically saying it's okay to take risks and it's a good thing to take risks. And that means you're going the right direction.
Thank you, guys. Will you be continuing your mentorship beyond the program?
I'll jump in, even though I'm not really on the panel, but I will speak from past experience with Hexagon. I still work with my past mentees. In fact, I just worked on something last night to give some feedback to someone from a previous season. So I would say for me, I think that will continue to run. I'd also like to kind of mention that I still have my mentors, from over 20 years, and I spent time this weekend working with my mentors. So I think it's a fantastic opportunity to hang on to these people and benefit for them throughout your career. You never outgrow your mentors because they're always working ahead of you. So.
Yeah, me too. I stay in touch definitely with my previous mentees and continue to work with them, some of them on projects. And depending on what phase I'm at in life, yeah, I definitely have mentors in other things. Like I have a mentor now in the startup business world who kind of teaches me a lot about the business side of things that, that's an area that I get mentorship on. So yeah, it's just a constant part of life.
Something that one of my mentors told me once is that we should each be building our board of directors. So that doesn't necessarily mean that it's one person that we go to for everything, but there's different people that you have different types of relationships with that support you in different ways. And so I think about not being everything to one person and not expecting one person to be everything to me, but knowing who I can go to for different things that I may need help with, and hoping that I can serve as a resource. And that people sort of see me in that way as well.
Okay, thank you so much, Emily. And then we have one more question, or a few more questions. What do you think your key takeaways are being a mentor or as a mentee?
Oh my gosh, can I talk again? Because I need to say how insanely difficult it is to break into a new industry while having children and a working spouse and managing a household and working another job. Like this whole process, like honestly, the way that I came to UX, it was like from such a privileged place, and seeing other folks sort of go through the process without even just like one thing, like your kid gets sick and like you're out, like you can't do the things that you need to do. And it's just an enormous uphill battle when you're already stacked in other areas of your life.
Mentorship keeps me on my toes too, because there were a number of questions when I'm trying to show something in Figma and I forgot my, my keyboard shortcuts or something like that. And I was like, yo, Katrina, I'm sorry. Give me like 1 second to look this up, because I hadn't used it in too long, so it was great learning experience for me as well. So I thought that was something that was interesting for me. I love staying on my toes and I love learning new things, but I'll be damned if I don't remember some of the things I already learned at some point in my life. So.
Yeah, I think one thing too is like, I think a lot of people, at least in this position of like transitioning into UX from other field or another job, they talk a lot about just like prepping for an interview or like getting the job. But then it's like, once you get the job, there are so many things that you have to navigate and like figure out and understand, because I think probably in many other fields as well, but like things can mean different things at different companies and like roles can be defined differently. And so I really enjoyed the conversations I had with Lisa that were just about like navigating that space, like once you're in the job too, which I think a lot of people don't really talk about as much.
To dovetail from that, the other thing is, I think a lot of new designers to get into new jobs end up being the only person there doing that job, because the people hiring them don't know what they're actually looking for either. So it's like a confounding effect where they don't know what they're asking for and you don't entirely know what you're supposed to give. So to have somebody else to bounce ideas off of, that third party to triangulate against, can be extremely helpful.
I was going to second something that you said earlier, David. I think, and I've said this before, so it's a bit of a repeat, but I think one of the biggest values I get out of this program is any opportunity that you have to mentor or teach. It makes your understanding of the same subject even more strong, right? So I think it really helps crystallize your deeper understanding of the domain. I think the second thing that I would mention that became more apparent to me this time is that it's quite interesting, because you experience UX throughout your career, but by having the mentees, you kind of get a glimpse of what UX looks like in other companies that you may never ever work with, right? You get a broader sampling of, because there's lots of different flavors of how UX is operating and working throughout the industry. So I found that to be interesting, and I imagine I'm going to learn more as we go forward.
I just wanted to add something, just butting into, because why not? But it's funny because Roja and I, at different times, we were doing the same thing, which was transitioning to a new job at a new company in this remote time, which I think, congratulations, to all of those that could achieve it. It's actually really hard because you lose a lot of the social contexts of how their team operates, how the company operates, how, the dynamics between people, and having to figure that out remote, I think was, for me, it's still a learning experience. And it's just one of those things that we, funny enough, have had in common, right? So from the little experience that I had before her, starting, it was a great tool, because it's a lot gets lost in translation when you're behind a screen.
So we have 5 more minutes for the Q&A. So if anyone in the audience has a question they'd like to ask, feel free. Go ahead, Nia.
Thank you for doing this, really appreciate it. My question is to the mentors, what have you learned from your mentees?
I've learned a lot of stuff all the time. Like sometimes they're more hip than you are because they're like just getting into the industry. So they're they're like learning the new stuff that, like, if you've been in the industry for like 15 years or so, you might not know. You might be like, oh, I didn't know you could do that with Google Slides. look at you. And then you just like learn and pick up these new things and like stay current. But then you also like learn how like you're constantly like witnessing how people's early skills or proclivities evolve into real actual areas where you can give value. So
Thomas, the flip side of your first comment there, you know, I continue to learn how much tribal knowledge there is in our industry, you know, so like they may be super hip about something, but then there's sometimes you'll say something and you realize, oh, I need to define that a little bit better. And that helped, you know what I'm saying? Like it helps me figure out a better way to refine my own speech patterns and lexicon when it comes to educating and speaking about my industry. So I think that's the opposite side of that first part, in a good way.
That sounds like really great practice in general, especially when you're a designer on a team of non-designers, speaking to business, speaking to people who are not familiar with our lingo. I think maybe being a mentorship is a practice ground for that outside of work, of course.
Yeah, I'll give an example, like UX designer and product designer. So try defining those two. You know, if you look for product designer on the internet as a job right now, you could be, you know, making physical goods, or you could be doing digital applications, you know, and then roll into user experience research and you have a UX designer, right? And then somebody's hiring that and you have no idea which part of those slices of the pie you're supposed to be doing, you know? So I was like, oh man, I really need to figure out a better way to describe this. And like, okay, if I'm talking about this slice of the pie, what does that actually mean? You know, and it helped me actually refine the way that I spoke about it. So.
What is the future of UX?
UX has a very bright future. When you think about when you think about like the areas that like just one example, years ago, this one startup I was working with, we watched the Apple showcase when they would come out with new stuff. And when they came out with the new thing of like, you could do the 3D press, we're like, oh, wow, that's a whole new zone of interactions that we didn't even account for. And so when you think about the constant new devices, the different areas that things spread, I think that it has a really bright future. I think that you have to anticipate the areas where artificial intelligence is going to take over little parts of our job. So if you think about like 20 years ago, one thing that a visual designer would be really good at is like really good at lining things up or making a screen look like it's in a device. But then as the tools develop, they start doing the little things for you. So then you evolve as a professional to doing like the higher order things within your profession, but it doesn't go away. Like the need to design stuff for human beings, I think will continue to evolve. You know, you've got GUIs, right? Graphic user interfaces, audio, VUIs, right? Voice user interfaces, and all these different types of way that technology continues to express itself. So really, really bright future.
I think the future of UX is around accessibility. I've seen areas around supporting people with disabilities and just making things easier for people where the world is inherently uneasy is really incredible. And a lot of that like has come out of 2020 as well. Even some simple things like you can order food like really easily on the phone where you don't have to meet someone at the front door. Like that is so enabling for a lot of folks. And I really see that like even in my own company that people are paying more attention to people with disabilities and sort of the ways that UX can contribute to equity in technology.
None of these answers are mutually exclusive because both of those are fantastic answers. I'd say for me, working more with the business, I'm learning how much more data is driving decisions for our clients and our customers and how we actually have to apply that to the user experience. And what does the security look like around that? Like right now, we have a lot of clients that want to ask for things like zip codes so that they can target them. And we have to be cognizant of, okay, well, does the user actually want to give up that information? Should we make it required? How do you actually tell a business or a client, you know, well, that might not be a good idea, or what does that look like when it actually comes to the registration process? And that's more of a, you know, future of UX in the next 1 to 3 years, if not already on our doorstep. So those are the things that we've been thinking about a lot as a business right now.
All right, and finally, what is your advice to those that are going to be interested in becoming a mentor and those that are going to be interested in becoming a mentee?
I would say from the get-go to establish some goals. So I think what you did or talked about doing, Hannah, was really interesting, where you spent this time to build your portfolio. So if that's what you want to get out of it, great. If you want to practice interviews, like set that time aside so that there's sort of, okay, you like know where you're headed. We're sort of directionally correct on most of our meetings. And ultimately, when you wrap up, you can say, okay, have we finished? Do we need a little bit more time? Like, how can I support you in the future?
Yeah, exactly, Emily. And actually, that was what I was going to say too, is set goals at the beginning, because if you don't know where you're going, you're not going to know when you get there, right? And that was one of my goals. Another one of my goals was, it was either do that or reframe the experience that I have to fit UX research. And so looking back, I'm like, yeah, I'm glad I went with the first goal. And that was a mutual decision between myself and my mentor to create a new UX portfolio. Also looking at the other goals that I wrote down, I have them in front of me. You know, I'm seeing stuff I had written about, you know, I want to be a quantitative UX researcher. Now that I'm done with the program, I know I'm actually aiming for mixed methods. So just kind of seeing what your thoughts were before and how far you've come is very rewarding.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said so far. I think to add, yes, have a plan, maybe be okay with making adjustments to that plan as you're moving along. Just maybe you'll discover things that you hadn't, or there will be other things that you're interested in exploring. So I would say stay open to adjusting that. But what I really liked about this program was we had a match event. It was like speed dating for mentors and mentees. And so Hexagon did a really good job of like making sure everyone was like compatible with each other and ending up with someone that they really could work well with, and you know, had a similar vision for how they wanted the program to go. So I really enjoyed that.
All right, thank you so much. And then our last question, how do you differentiate between the different named UX roles?
Well, look, all right. I'll tell you how we do it in our company, but I think it should go without saying that the way this can work in any company, there is no wrong answer. And that's one of the things that Katrina and I worked on. So if your company does it that way, perfect. If it works for you all, fantastic, keep doing it. So the way that we kind of do it over at Mainline is we have a user experience researcher who actually studies videos of users using it, who deals with samples of users, or our administrators or moderators to actually help define the wireframes for the features that are upcoming. That goes off to an actual product designer who works with them and the users to actually pixel perfect the designs, which then get handed off to the developers. So that's kind of the like overarching way that we do that. We consider the first aspect of that a UX designer, even though a lot of people may call that a user experience researcher. We call the second aspect of that a product designer. Although, like I said earlier, you could also consider that a user experience designer. And a lot of times, if you're taking your first job, those first two are the same thing. And then the developers are obviously the ones that take that and push it over the finish line before getting it out to production. So that's kind of how we do it. Now, like I said, I feel like there's no wrong answer here. And I'd love to hear how everybody else does it too, because it's a fun question to answer.
This is a particularly poignant question for me right now, because this is actually what I was working on with my mentors over the weekend, because in my current company, we are creating job categories as a function to create a UX career path, right? And I feel like it's fairly important, because you want to make sure that people's skills are really truly represented, right? And that we've captured the right categories, and it's something we're still trying to work out. I don't think we've landed personally. But I think what I struggle with is, you know, if you change companies, which probably you will, it changes and evolve. And like David said, you have to sort of adapt to it. But I think my main concern is that the skills are represented, and that people can really kind of focus on the things that they do very well, you know, and feel fulfilled. So I don't really have a specific answer, but just
Kate, something interesting that we do at our company is the progression isn't you're a user experience designer and then you become a product designer. We try to go vertical with it. So you're a user experience designer 1 and then a user experience designer 2, because there is a lot of value in the depth of knowledge within those actual verticals.
Yeah, so. and we do the same. We basically have levels within each of those buckets, but I think it's also important to make sure you've got the right buckets, right? Because if you make too large of a bucket, then I think people potentially are pushed to do things that they don't necessarily enjoy or they don't feel skilled at or don't want to be skilled at, right? So, and if you make them too granular, I don't think that serves well either, but that's more than what you asked for, but it's a complicated puzzle.
Well, we started out with just one, you know, and they wore a bunch of hats. And then as we grew, we actually started to zygote split, you know, and then next thing you know, we have 3 now, and then we'll probably split beyond that too. So I think a lot of that is a function of the business and where it's at too. And like I said, that's what creates so many different answers to this question, because there is no wrong answer as long as you're making money so your business can survive, right? Like if that's working for your business and you guys have a way to feed your kids, keep doing it, you know, by all means.
Yeah, another factor that plays into it is there's a lot of fads every so years that changes things. So like design thinking is really just user-centered design. A data scientist is really a statistician. Don't get me started on UI UX, but like but yeah, so I think it's if the roles revolve around like kind of like clearly what you're doing and what kind of role you're playing, like each place kind of has their own way of tweaking it. So
I'm sorry, I've got to chime in on what Thomas just said, because I've worked in UX for, I think I'm going on 27 years now, and you just watch the field just reinvent itself, you know, and everything gets named and you're just like, oh, here we go again. So it will continue, I'm sure. It will.
Yeah. I think that a lot of it has to do also with like your choice of going like big corp or like startup. So like a lot of how the roles are defined are also with the entity that you choose, right? Because like, yeah, so like the bigger corporations like Exxon and Shell will have down to the like, oh, you're a UX designer too, you know, versus like if you choose to, you're kind of more adventurous and you want to wear many more hats and you may choose a startup. That is also a consideration for what may bring you the most joy, in my experience.
Cool. I think these are all really great answers. Thank you, panelists, and thank you, mentors and mentees who's jumped in to help and explain your experience, but also having this very wonderful discussion about UX, UI, and the definition in the industry. I think we definitely can make this a whole night, whole evening kind of event. That's very interesting. Just stick around and talk about this. To wrap us up for tonight, we definitely still want to celebrate with you guys. So check your emails because we have sent out a certificate for our mentors and mentees for completing the fall 2020 cohort. For those who are interested in our oncoming mentorship program, our mentee application is already open. We were planning to have this event last week before the storm, so you had 2 weeks to do the application. But of course, we're having it this week. You have until February 28th to turn in your application. Mentors, you have until March 4th. And March 8th is when we make the mentee decisions and decide on a kickoff day for our March match event and a launch of the spring cohort in April. For those who want to see the application link, I'll post them in the chat. Next slide. So some things that I think Hannah and some of our other mentees has already covered is what we're looking for in a mentee and sort of the kind of soft skill sets that's important to have as a mentee. Primarily, we are only opening our mentee application to the Houston area. So if you're in Houston, you qualify for the program. We're definitely looking for somebody who is at least able to dedicate 2 hours a month to the mentorship. But like Hannah mentioned before, the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. And it is a program that you get out of what you put in. We are looking for at least a baseline understanding of UX and design experience. So share with us your portfolio in your application. We'll take that into consideration, not only in considering what you're looking for in a mentor, but also in evaluating your readiness for the program. Be passionate about your growth and development. You are that person who's going to determine how much you get out of this program. So definitely be proactive and definitely be open and willing to learn and pivot your goals as you're part of this 3-month relationship with your mentors. Next slide. So just some ways to connect with us. We are on Instagram and Twitter, more active on Instagram than on Twitter. We're definitely on Slack a lot, as well as Meetup, where we're posting events. On Slack, we have different channels for jobs, for research help, for UI challenges. So the community is definitely more active outside of the Meetup events that's monthly. So join us through the link you see there. And if you have any question about Hexagon, that's our email. We also have a very specific email for the mentorship as well. That's hexagonux.mentorship.houston@gmail.com. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. We'll hope to see your applications and you guys back in our events coming up in March.
Thank you all.
Thank you guys so much.
Bye.
Bye.